Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of my Projectionist vlog. My name is Eve. Thank you very much for tuning in. And today's episode, I'm going to talk about the IMAX, for me, at my theater, the IMAX going digital 10 years ago. Now, it wasn't exactly today, because another anniversary occurs today for a movie called Sucker Punch, directed by Zack Snyder. And I wasn't a big fan of that movie, but I remember when it came out because that was the first movie that we played on IMAX Digital. But, you know, around this time, 10 years ago, I think it was a Friday, it was like, or this week, Sucker Punch was coming out, maybe a day or two, or today, was the completion of the, from film to digital IMAX. So Sucker Punch was the first movie to play through our new digital IMAX system in 2011. So the construction started, I believe, the first week of March. The last movie that I ran on IMAX film, 2D film, was a movie called I Am Number 4, another pretty forgettable film. If anybody remembers that was like back when those teen adult novels were kind of coming out, like, within the midst of Twilight, and I think Hunger Games was a year later. And the Divergent series, like all these like kind of movies were coming out. All these, the Maze Runner, all these movies were popular back then. So I Am Number 4 was not one of the lucky ones to succeed. But that was the last movie that I ran on IMAX film. And then I remember running the last show. I believe it was like the last day of February, second to last day of February. And it was a Sunday night, and I remember running the show, turning off the projector, and it was, it was pretty sad. And I just said, man, what's going to happen next? So prior to that, I already arranged for myself to take like an overdue kind of vacation. I had vacation hours that were like kind of racking up, and I said, you know what, I'll do this. I'll go on vacation while the IMAX goes under construction. And I actually went to bartending school for like 2 weeks, which was a complete waste. Don't ever go to bartending school. It's cool to learn about the drinks, but like it goes nowhere. Shows you how naive I was back then. So I did that, and then yeah, I came back to work. This is in New Rochelle, New Rock City. I came back to work, and there it was, the digital IMAX. Now, the film projector was kind of like pushed back against the wall. The platter system was still where it should have been. The sound system looked like it was updated. It was updated. And like I remember coming in, and it was 2 projectors. Both of them had polarizers in the front, which can kind of move accordingly. If the movie was 3D, it'll move in place. If it was 2D, it'll move to the side. And the projector was built by Christie, so this was a dual Christie projection system. And I remember the console. There was this new console, a touchscreen, and so I was like, wow, this is the IMAX. And the first movie that we played, or that I remember seeing, was Sucker Punch. I caught like the last like 10 minutes. I was upstairs, and the picture looked great. It was really bright. It looked way better than the Sony projectors that we had for all the regular movie theaters. Those projectors have like a green tint to them. But the Christie Digital really looked good. So I had to get like used to that, and I was like taught how to operate it and ingest, and doing that was like my segue into learning how to do digital. And then shortly after, I was in charge of all the digital content in the building. Just ingesting, building up playlists, allocating movies, stuff like that. But the IMAX digital was, it was all right. It was manual. It wasn't automated, and I remember ingesting movies. They would come in these cases that were blue. They came in these blue cases. Regular movies would come in like the Technicolor cases, which were very, very kind of like thick and hard. But the IMAX cases would come in on these. They were called Phantom drives, and you ingest it two ways. You can do it through the console, or you can do it through the back of the projector. You just hook up a USB, and you ingest. The only difference between the regular theaters and the IMAX is that the regular theaters, a movie will ingest in like a little over half the time, whereas an IMAX movie, it's literally as long as the movie is to ingest. And of course, you needed the keys, the KDM, each week to unlock the content. You get the key in the email, you put it on a thumb drive, ingest a thumb drive, and you go to the console and you move the keys into the to the server. But I was still up in the booth, starting all the digital movies and learning how to understand the digital and changing the bulb and you can't focus with Allen keys. You use this touch screen on the side of the projectors to kind of get the highest number. So that was pretty cool, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not on the floor. But then shortly after, maybe at the end of 2011, they started scheduling me downstairs at customer service, and that's when I would go down, and I would sit at customer service, building up playlists and starting movies. It was so annoying. And then certain movies that had 3D, you had to go upstairs and move the polarizer back and forth and come back downstairs. And as you're doing this at customer service, you have guests coming up to you with issues with their Regal Rewards card, and just they're unhappy about something or like whatever, And I've always helped them out, and I was able to kind of do both. And so it was pretty annoying. And then the machines went automated, and then my hours up in the booth were limited, and I was kind of doing more managerial work. So the digital was exciting, and I know that the managers I was working with, the higher up managers like the GM, first assistant, DM, they were excited for this technology, but I wasn't excited because I listed some positives, but there were a lot of negatives that came with it. And not to knock digital, like I think it's fine that we have both digital and film. It definitely makes it easier to run. There's pros and cons to both formats. But the negatives about this was shortly after it went digital, I lost my one of the first things I lost was my my benefits, my healthcare benefits, because I was going to be reduced to part-time hours. But now that I'm part-time hours, I have to work, certain number of hours a week. I can't go over, but then once in a while or every, other week, you get like a busy movie and they work you like 30, 40 hours, and you make some money, your paychecks differ, but you don't have a steady pay and you have no, benefits either. So that was like a big negative. And at the time I was, involved in a relationship, very heavily involved with that. And, on top of losing the insurance, I didn't get a raise. That was another problem. And I had to start coming to work dressing up in a tie and a jacket, And also, when it went digital, there was no, approach to me. Now, this isn't Regal's fault, but, I think they could have at least found something. There was no offer to be a technician somewhere, or hey, let's put you on a training program. Let's get you going. You've been doing all this film stuff for a long time. You're pretty good at it. Let's help advance your career and knowledge. Never happened. So I ultimately became a floor manager. I lost everything, and I felt stuck. I felt very, very, very stuck, and I just was becoming very unhappy. And also on top of that, like, there were managers that had grudges that I, when I was up in the booth, they would try to tell you how to, like, do your job, and you would be like, nah, I got this, because they didn't know how to do that. And you would kind of argue with them on when to start the movie because they wanted to hold the movie up, and you're like, no, like, I have to start this on time. It's going to back everything up. And but then when I became on the floor, like, you could see a little bit of that, like, kind of tension. You could feel it, and that past revenge to kind of, like, push me around a little bit. It wasn't too intense, but there was some attitude from people. And also, I didn't really know them too well. I just was always upstairs. I never really worked with them. I remember one time I was in the regular projection booth. I was starting movies, and then I think I was in the middle of something, and they reminded me, hey, by the way, Eve, on the radio, can you go upstairs and start such and such movie? Just press play. This was, very early on. After we went digital, there was, like, all these reminders to run around and change polarizers and start movies because we weren't automated yet. And I was like, okay. And the general manager at the time went on the radio and he said, oh, I'll go up and start it. And he went up and he started the movie because it was digital. But I kind of took that as, like, an FU sort of thing, from a manager that I worked with, who was actually a pretty nice guy, and I worked pretty well with him, and he always kind of looked out for me. But I think it was just like a kind of a little reminder of, like, we got this now. So yeah, that's all that was happening, and from that point on, I stayed with Regal, and I tried really hard to become a manager again, which I kind of did at Movieland, but I had to get back into it. But Movieland and New Rock are two different machines. They're two different beasts. New Rock is 18 screen, constantly sold out. They get almost every busy movie. Movieland was, like, on its last legs. But I tried really hard. Concession, box office, customer service, but I just had this, like, anxiety of dealing with guests, like, all the time. Just, I didn't want to be back there. I didn't want to be behind the concession and or ripping tickets. But you know what? I was good at it. I'm very friendly. I'm good with people, and but I don't prefer to do that. But then from 2011 to 2015, because I left in 2015, in between that time, IMAX people, people from IMAX, they came and they said, hey, just to let you guys know, you're going to be getting some future IMAX film releases. They didn't say what they were. I knew, obviously Dark Knight Rises. And then that time came around. And I was the only one in the building that knew how to handle all the IMAX. And, technician came. I worked with him, and, he helped me out. I kind of handled everything, and we had a good run of Dark Knight Rises. But it felt great. My energy was up. My confidence was up. And then when it was over, it was back to managing. 2 years later, Interstellar came out. Same feeling. I was excited. But... around that time, I just was really getting annoyed with being a manager, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I said, after Interstellar, I'm going to quit. And I did. It didn't happen right away, but I did it the right way. I gave my 2 weeks, but I slowly, like, hinted to it to the GM at that time. It was a different GM by the time Interstellar came out. And, he understood, and we kind of parted ways, and then I just like went off and did my own thing. You know, I ended up doing like a lot of entry level jobs, mainly serving tables. I worked at a restaurant, and then and that was for like maybe like 4 months, and then I worked at an Alamo Draft House where I served tables there. But you know, I brought my skills and my background, my experience. Said, hey, I'm a projectionist, you know, but it never worked for me. I don't know why. It never worked out. That's a whole nother story. For some reason, I've been with Alamo Draft House for like 4 years. Could have never been a projectionist. I don't know why. I don't know what the issue was. I said, hey, I know 35 digital IMAX. Like, you know, they don't do IMAX, but still, it was there. I don't know what the politics were with that company. But then I got the Dunkirk job, you know, the contracting job, and then shortly after I got the job at the Maritime Aquarium, and then, you know, I started seeing a comeback for me. You know, the 2010s was rough. The digital came in, it killed me. It really brought me down. And, you know, I ran some films in the beginning of the digital, like when it first came, but then I had a little in between. But I somehow knew that film was going to find its way to me. And, you know, ultimately I ended up with a full-time gig at the end of the decade, you know, working at Jacob Burns Film Center, running archival films, and I also would do the Maritime part-time. And then everything else you guys all know. It's, you know, in the history of my career, you know, the pandemic hit, you know, I lost Jacob Burns, then I worked at the drive-in, then I went back to the Maritime. So yeah, that was my experience of what happened after the IMAX went digital in 2011, 10 years ago. And what's funny is that here now, well, not now, but in January of this year, 2021, I just shut down the Maritime Aquarium. So it's just like 10 years pretty much, you know, like, you know, I've shut it down. I'm like, man, I did this 10 years ago, but at New Rock, you know. But yeah, so yeah, you know, I had a lot of resentment towards digital for a long time. I just was very upset by it. You know, but because of the change, you know, I wasn't making a lot of money. I had a lot of, you know, domestic issues, you know, like relationship issues at the time. And I felt I had no purpose. I had nothing, you know. So it was rough. It was a rough road, the 2010s. It was rough. And I always look back, you know, around this time, I'm like, man, 10 years ago, you know, I'm kind of in a similar situation. You know, a brief moment of like not having a job, and, you know, something that I was doing is just kind of over, you know. It's just like literally 10 years. Like I went through so much in the 2010s that 2020 hits and I'm just like back to square one again. I'm like, huh? You know, like, but I've been very lucky during this whole thing. And, you know, like I said, I found a couple jobs, and I do have a prospect, a good one, coming up. I'm really excited. I'm not going to say anything about it now, but yeah, I'm excited to start. I start soon. You know, the more deeper I get into it, you know, and they get confidence in me and they like me and whatever, then I'll just be like, hey, you know, I got something. You know, I'll let you know what it is. So, all right, everybody. Sorry that it's a long video. Had a lot to say. Thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification bell to see more videos just like this. This is an 80s Die Hard production. Thanks again, everybody. Later. Bye.